Hi everyone, I'm Leah, owner of Fishtown Websites. In this video, I'm going to show you how to add custom fonts to a static website. So I have a project. I'm building a website for a local cleaning company, and one of my goals is to make it stand out a little. A lot of sites end up using the same handful of sans serif fonts, and after a while, they all start to have a similar look and feel. Choosing a good font pairing is one of the easiest ways to give a site its own personality without making huge design changes. If you've ever wanted to give your site a more unique look with custom typography, this is a pretty straightforward process once you've done it a few times. Let me show you the workflow I use. There are a few small details that can trip you up though, especially if you haven't touched fonts in a while. Fonts are not my favorite part of building websites. It's one of those things that you usually set up once at the start of a project and then forget about. So it's easy to get a little bit rusty, kind of like muscle memory. So if anything goes wrong along the way, I'll troubleshoot it in real time instead of editing it out. That's usually where the useful stuff is anyway. By the end of this video, you'll know how to download some fonts, add them to your project, load them with CSS, and use them across your website. I've been spending some time looking at font pairings, and what I want to do with my own project here is make this logo its text, but I want to have two separate fonts in there just to add some personality in the logo, and I think this is a rough idea of what I'd like to do. So the top is sans serif and then the bottom is a cursive font, and I found two fonts that I think are close to that. One site I've found really helpful is this site fontpair.co. I'll include a link in the video description, or if you search for font pairings, it'll probably be the top search result. It gives you a combination of fonts that already work well together, and it saves a lot of time for testing random combos yourself. You can see a bunch of different options here. You can go to the pairing site and see the two together. And how they would look with different color schemes. So you can check that out. For this project, I've picked the pairing that I already like. I think the two fonts I want to use are Anton and Pacifica, I believe. Pacifico, sorry. So instead of using just one font, like I said, we're going to use two separate fonts, one for the company name and then the rest of the bottom part of the logo, the company name, will be the script font, which is Pacifico. And that'll give it a nicer visual hierarchy. I prefer to always use actual text for things like a logo instead of an image. It's better for accessibility, and search engines can read the text directly. If the company name is inside just the image, the search engines are relying on the image file name and the alt text instead. So you should probably name it the company name, but it's always just easier to use a tag and put the company name as text rather than using an image tag with the file name and the alt text. And what I'd like to do There's a ton of other reasons to use text rather than an image file, but we'll get into that another time. Maybe I'll make another video. But in the meantime, let's get started. So I have the two font files, the font websites, to download them here. The first thing we need are the font files. So for this project, I'm using a locally hosted font, which means that I'll be downloading the font files. So they'll live inside my project instead of being loaded from a CDN. Depending on the font, you'll usually end up with file extensions like WOFF, WOFF2, or .ttf. The overall process stays the same regardless of the format. We're just going to reference whatever files we have. So let's organize the project now. This is my code. So we need to load the fonts into the project. So since I'm working with the static site generator, you'll notice up here in assets, fonts, there's already a fonts folder established in the file structure right here. If you're building a site completely from scratch, you probably won't have that folder yet. In that case, just create a new fonts folder yourself. And typically that should be inside your assets directory to keep things organized in a standard format. Because I'm using two fonts and we already have an existing font, Roboto, currently in my project, I'm going to separate them into their own folders so everything stays clean. So let's make a folder for the first font, which is called Anton. And then the second font is called Pacifico. So let's make that folder. Oops, I made it within the Anton folder. Let's put it directly under the fonts folder. Okay, so the folders are both there. So what I'll do now is download the font. So this is the font I would like to use. So if you go to fonts.google.com, you can check out tons of different fonts here. You can filter them with different styles, font weights. There's seasonal ones, there's cursive, there's everything you could imagine. So I'm just choosing Anton because that matches the design I'd like. So when you find the font you'd like, go to the page, you click on Get Font, and there's one selected. So once you click on it and get to the Get Font button, you're going to click Download All. Like I said, I'm downloading the fonts right into my project. I don't want to have to link to a CDN link, which is right here. You could see the code and how it refers to the Google Fonts website. But what I'll be doing is downloading directly. So you could see here there's a zip file for the first font, Anton, and here is the second font that I'm going to download. Let's delete the old one, and we're going to download this as well. So once those are done, we're going to extract each of those zip files. So let's extract Pacifico, and there it is, and we'll also extract Anton. Now I'm going to drop both of these font families into the project, and I can close some of these windows. So here is my code, and I'll start with Anton. I'm going to grab the file, and you can see this is a true type font, the TTF extension that we saw earlier. So we just drag that and put it into Anton. There it is. And now we do the same for Pacifico. Okay, next we can load the fonts. We're going to load the fonts into the project. Again, since this is a static site generator setup, I'm not going to drop this into individual files. Instead, everything is going to flow through this shared file called base.html, and this contains the head tag. You can see here on line 5 the opening head tag, and then line 41 it closes, and the fonts section is right here on line 30 to 32, and that's the existing font on the website. We're going to now add the other 2 fonts that we just downloaded and loaded into our project. This is the cleanest place to handle fonts, because anything we add here, it will apply globally across all pages, and the head tag is going to be on all pages. So what I'll do is, rather than typing this out manually, we're going to copy paste this twice, one for Anton and one for Pacifico. And the only thing that I'll change here is this section, and because we also added a folder underneath fonts, I'll add that into the path right here so that it's directed correctly. So we go to fonts, Anton, and then we're going to copy paste this rather than type it. That goes here, and then we will do the same for Pacifico. So and delete the rest. And I believe we need to change this to true type, because that's the file extensions. You could see here this previous font, Roboto, has a file extension of WOFF2, so that is this type right here. So we're going to change both of these new lines to true type. Let's see what happens. That could be something that we need to edit later, but we'll check. Okay, that's one piece of the puzzle. Font variables are going to be the next step. So in root CSS, instead of scattering font names all over my CSS, I'm going to set this up using CSS variables in my root.scss file. This makes things easier to maintain. If I ever want to change a font later, update my site, change the design, I only will need to update it in one place instead of hunting through multiple files. So inside this root.scss, I'm going to define my font variables like this. And what I'm going to do is, since these 2 fonts are only going to be used in my logo, I'm going to call the 2 variables logo top and logo bottom. And now I can use those anywhere in my styles. And the other thing is, because this root.scss file has probably several thousand lines of code, rather than checking to see where these two fonts should be updated, I'm going to do a universal search for Roboto and see where else we might need to do anything with setting up our new fonts. So we're going to see where this is referred to and make sure that the same setup is done for Anton and for Pacifico. So we already did the base.html, as you could see, so I'm just making sure that we're duplicating our efforts. Not duplicating our efforts and just searching through the existing code base to see that everything that Roboto has, the two new fonts also have. So this is done, so I'm just going through and seeing where Roboto is referred to and doing the same. You can see Anton is referred to a few times. That's because it has multiple boldness font weights. They have 400, 700, and 900. These two fonts that I got only have one font weight. They're just regular, so that's 400. So I'm just going to make one font face section for each of those fonts. There's no other font weights for Anton or Pacifico. And here I'm just looking for the file path again rather than typing it out. So I'm going to get this . And let's do the same for Pacifico. I believe that's it, but who knows? We're going to test it out next to see if it's actually ready and taking effect. So at the very top, we can see right here on, you can see here on line 40, my body font is the font that I'm using throughout the majority of this site. That's most of the paragraphs, the text, that's all Roboto right here. So let's just quickly test to see if our two fonts are correctly installed and set up and the styling is done correctly. So we're going to change the body font right here. That's assigned to, currently it's assigned to Roboto. We're going to change that to the cursive font, which is, the variable is called logo bottom. So we're going to change all of the body font to a cursive, so that should give us an idea of if the site mostly changes to cursive, then we did everything correctly. And oh, it's actually working. I'm surprised. So you can see here, this is the font I wanted to use to the bottom, the pink part of this company name. So let's actually do it now. So we'll change the body text back to the regular Roboto font. This is pretty hard to read. Oh, and we have a working, oh, I'm just kidding. Okay, it looks like it's okay on part of the site for mobile, but not for full desktop. So somewhere in my style sheet, we need to also change what the font family is. It seems to be different for mobile versus desktop. Okay, I think we have success on all window sizes now. Let's just quickly test it out. Yeah, I think it looks great. I'll have to modify the size a bit because it's a little squished and small, hard to read, especially with that cursive. But yeah, that's really all there is to it. It's just a handful of files we need to edit. So again, we downloaded the fonts. We organized the project by putting in the downloaded fonts into the code. Then in our base.html, which is where the head tag is, we loaded the fonts right into the project. And then the last piece was we used font variables in our root.scss file. And we called them logo top and logo bottom, and then we decided where to style them. And that was in my header tag, which I had broken out into 2 spans. It's only a few lines of CSS, but once you understand how fonts work, you can pretty much use any font in your projects. If this helped, consider liking the video and subscribing to my channel. If you've got any ideas or other tutorials you would like to see, drop a comment below. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye!